It's your friend Johan here, and today I'm going to be asking ChatGPT what it thinks the greatest albums of all time are. Results may vary. It depends on how, one asks the question, how one words the question, and just like, I guess, how the AI responds. Based on what it gives me, I'm going to see if I agree first and foremost, and then, maybe I'll rearrange its list into my own liking. I'm going to pull up ChatGPT right now, and then we're going to ask this question. If you were to pick the 25 greatest albums of all time, what would they be and how would you rank them? Yeah, that's how I'll ask it. Let's see what it gives me. Okay, Beatles, obviously, Marvin Gaye, Pink Floyd, of course, MJ, Nirvana, David Bowie, Lauryn Hill, my favorite, Lemonade. Really? Amy Winehouse and Stankonia. Interesting. Now, before I rearrange this list, two things I want to mention is that I'm very much disappointed that Songs from the Big Chair and Voodoo are not on this list, and neither are any metal albums. The second thing is because ChatGPT gave me 2 Beatles albums, I usually like sticking to one artist per album when it comes to, making lists and ranking stuff. So I'm gonna omit Revolver. So yeah, I'm gonna rearrange this list that ChatGPT gave me and fit it to my liking. I'm gonna breeze my way through picks 24 through picks 11. Those are like the latter halves of the list, and then I'm gonna be focusing more on the top 10 when we get to it. At number 24, I got Stankonia. That's the one thing that I agree with ChatGPT on. Not because this is a bad album, by any means, but yeah, you would think that like other hip hop albums would, make this list as opposed to Stankonia. For me, like Illmatic and Mad Villainy come to mind. Following that, number 23, we got The Velvet Underground and Nico. I've never liked this album. 22, we got Beyonce and her album Lemonade. I like B-Day and Renaissance more. 21, we got Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. At 20, we got Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street. At number 19, we got Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life. Not only is Talking Book my personal favorite Stevie Wonder album just because it's more consistent and more concise, but I also think it's his best. After that, we got Bob Dylan, Highway 61 Revisited. Got Amy Winehouse, Back to Black. This album is fantastic. I just like Frank more. Number 16, we got Fleetwood Mac and their album Rumors. 15, we got Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. 14, we got Joni Mitchell, Blue. Number 13, we got The Clash and their album London Calling, which to me is the greatest punk album of all time. 12, we got Led Zeppelin 4, Led Zeppelin's best work. And finally, at number 11, we got Lauryn Hill and her album The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. This is my personal favorite hip-hop record of all time. And with that, The Miseducation just slightly misses out on the top 10 spot. That's why I have it at number 11. So at my number 10, I got the Beach Boys and their album Pet Sounds. Yeah, I've been pretty vocal on how much I'm not a Beach Boys guy just because I've never really been a Beach Boys guy, but I do think that it would be kind of disrespectful to not have Pet Sounds in a top 10 list, and that's why I have it at number 10. It's not a bad album. Of course, it would be crazy to say that it's a bad album. I've just never been a Beach Boys guy. Following that, at my number 9, we got MJ's Thriller. This is without a doubt MJ's best work, though I enjoy Off the Wall the most. I think it would be silly for me not to say that Thriller is MJ's most iconic album. Quincy Jones produced it. Members of Toto were session musicians on it. Yeah, this is just MJ's best work. I don't know what else to say. And at number 8, we got the Beatles and their album Abbey Road. Abbey Road is the album that I think is the Beatles' best work. It also is supposedly their last album. And with that, there's just like that season and maturity in them that I think comes across best on this album. Come Together is probably the best opening track among the albums on this list. Something, Oh Darling, Here Comes the Sun, they're all on this album. I've always preferred Beatles albums that were just like, a collection of solid songs. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that I dislike their more experimental stuff like what they did on Sgt. Pepper's, but just like I find it sick, or I've always preferred when artists and bands just like, had like a grouping of just like straight solid good undeniable songs, and there wasn't like an overarching concept or narrative that heightened the experience. It's just like straight to the point, solid songwriting. And I think Abbey Road is the best example of that. At my number 7, we got David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. Man, when I heard this album for the first time, I was absolutely blown away. And with an album like Ziggy Stardust, obviously, it has the mastery that is David Bowie with his performance and his songwriting. But, like Mick Ronson's contributions and Ken Scott's production all just make for Ziggy Stardust to be such an amazing experience of an album. Yeah, man, Ziggy Stardust is just a masterclass in storytelling, and it's just a sonic marvel, for one to take in. At number 6, we got Nirvana's Nevermind. Yeah, there's no album more emblematic of the 90s than Nevermind. Pretty much what I said about Abbey Road, Nevermind is like just a collection of straightforward and undeniable songs, but from the 90s, which is closer to me and more relatable to me. Teen Spirit, In Bloom, Come As You Are, Lithium, and these are just the hits. Album cuts like Breed and Drain You and the ever so haunting Polly. I argue that they carry just as much weight as the hits. Produced by Butch Vig, recorded at Sound City. Yeah, Kurt Cobain, Chris Novoselic, and Dave Grohl really made something special here. I got Radiohead's OK Computer. In Rainbows is my favorite Radiohead album, but without a doubt, OK Computer is Radiohead's most seminal work. I have OK Computer ahead of Nevermind just because there's before OK Computer and then there's after OK Computer. Musically and just like socioculturally, like things changed after OK Computer came out. Paranoid Android, Let Down, Karma Police, No Surprises, all these songs are on this album, and those are just 4 tracks. I could probably spend or make a 2-hour video talking about the whole track list and doing a play-by-play. Yeah, without a doubt, OK Computer is definitely a top 5 album of all time. After that, and at my number 4, we got Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. Probably the most iconic and recognizable album art on this list. One can argue that The Wall is Pink Floyd's best work, just because of how much of a magnum opus it is, and David Gilmour's solo on Comfortably Numb, which is arguably his most iconic solo of all time. But for me, Dark Side of the Moon is just, it has my money for being the best Pink Floyd album ever. David Gilmour solo on Time, Roger Waters' iconic bass line on Money. But for me, the song in the moment that solidifies Dark Side as one of the greatest albums of all time is the song Us and Them. It's just such a beautiful song. In my book, The Dark Side of the Moon is the best thing that, the English have produced musically. All right, we're at my top 3. Holding the bronze medal is Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. I usually listen to music on the go, specifically when I'm driving. That's how I like to enjoy my album listening experiences. But this is the only album that I've ever locked myself in my room so that I could, enjoy this thing in complete stillness. Boy Wonder, Pharrell, Knowledge, Thundercat, Kamasi Washington, all of these guys are on this album. I don't think anyone who isn't Kendrick and his collaborators could produce something that's of this magnitude. To Pimp a Butterfly is, in my book, Kendrick Lamar's greatest album. It's a multi-genre experiment gone right. It's an essay on African American culture, institutional discrimination, and just mental health overall. And it's just an experience that has left such an everlasting impact on me, and I can only imagine the impact that it's left on most people who are not just Kendrick fans, but who are just fans of music, who are fans of storytelling, and who are just fans of hip-hop. When I think of musical virtuosity, I automatically think of Prince. Prince isn't a jack of all trades, but more so like a master of all trades. When Doves Cry, Let's Go Crazy, the title/closing track, Purple Rain, all of these songs are fantastic, but my personal favorite cut from this album, and just my personal favorite Prince song of all time, is I Would Die For You. Although this is a musician's album, it's not pretentious, it's not self-indulgent, it's genuinely a fun time. Purple Rain and my number 1 pick, they alternate, but today, or at least going based off my gut, I'm definitely more of a 70s guy than I am an 80s guy, and yeah, that leads to my number 1 pick. And finally, at my number one, we got Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. What's Going On is very much a concept album, as all of its themes are pretty much socio-political. It famously is told from the perspective of a Vietnam War veteran who returns home to the States only to see the injustice and hatred that's running rampant in his backyard. Unfortunately, that is something that we're all accustomed to today. The session work done by the Funk Brothers, Marvin's singing and songwriting, all are amazing. This album's just phenomenal. Yeah, Marvin Gaye. What's Going On? It's the greatest album of all time. And there we have it, guys. A little bit of a different video for you today. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Yeah, I'll see you soon. Peace.